Before we embark on this journey, I must caution you that the tale ahead delves into mature themes. It explores the trials of new motherhood, the dynamics of family relationships, and the complexities of infidelity. If these subjects unsettle you, it may be wise to pause the viewing at this moment. It began so quietly, almost imperceptibly, that I hardly gave it a second thought, just to innocent looks. Or so I believed. Yet those glances held on, and as time passed, they grew increasingly difficult to overlook. He would gaze at me as if I were not his mother, as if he were perceiving me as something entirely different. Someone else. For a long time, I chose to pretend that I didn't see it. What was I meant to believe? He is my child. My child. A notion seemed utterly ludicrous, a flight of fancy. Yet once it took root in my mind, it became an unshakable companion, trailing me through every corner of this home. As I strolled by, I began to notice his gaze lingering on me. When I glanced his way, he'd avert his gaze, but just for a fleeting moment, as if he yearned for me to sense his watchful presence. Despite my efforts to dismiss it, I found myself unable to do so. And here's the part I dread to reveal. A part of me found some solace in it. Perhaps I even embraced it. Yet uttering those words leaves a bitter taste in my mouth. Yet, it is indeed the truth. After years of feeling invisible, of being overlooked and forgotten, having someone gaze at me like that stirred something within. Something I believed had long since faded away. My journey has not been without its challenges. My marriage, once vibrant, slowly withered and ultimately crumbled after 15 years. I devoted my time to holding us close, striving to be all that he desired, all that he craved. For a fleeting moment, I believed I was sufficient. But then the chasm began to widen. At first, it was the small things: no goodnight kiss, no inquiry about your day. Then came the silence, that heavy, unbearable silence that envelops a room and weighs down on your chest, leaving you gasping for breath. We ceased our struggles, as if we had both simply surrendered. In the end, we found ourselves as mere strangers cohabiting the same space. As he stepped through the door for the last time, I found no tears to shed. I expected relief, perhaps even a sense of freedom. Yet all that washed over me was a profound emptiness, as if something vital had been carved away from within. In that moment, it felt as if I was not merely losing him. I was losing the very essence of who I once was. The reflection in the mirror was a stranger, a shadow of the wife I used to be, stripped of desire and visibility. I was reduced to just a mom, clinging to a role that seemed to slip through my fingers like sand, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. By that time, Ethan had already embarked on his journey to college. He was my only child, my baby, and I had raised him mostly on my own. You see, Ryan, my ex-husband, was always more absorbed in his work than in our lives. But Ethan was my entire world. From the moment I cradled him in my arms, I understood that my journey would no longer revolve around my own desires. It would be a tale woven around him, his needs, his joy. And when the day came for him to embark on his college adventure, I felt a profound sense of completion. I had fulfilled my role, and he was ready to begin his own story. But then, a few months ago, he returned home. He didn't share much, only that college wasn't working out and he needed some time to sort things through. I didn't press him. I believed he would open up when he felt ready. That's the essence of Ethan, always so quiet, so effective. He tends to keep everything inside until it becomes too much to bear. I thought I understood him well, yet I believed I knew him well. Yet upon his return, an unsettling change lingered in the air. He was no longer the same boy I had sent off to college. A shadow had crept into his essence, leaving him restless and transformed. Frustration enveloped him, a heavy burden he couldn't seem to cast aside. He rarely ventured beyond the confines of his home, often retreating to his room or sinking into the couch, his gaze fixed on his phone, jaw clenched, as if caught in an unending struggle. Frustrated with the world around me, I sought to connect with him, to share my thoughts, yet he maintained his distance, keeping me at arm's length. And then, the glances began. At first, I wondered if it was all in my head. I would catch him looking at me from the corner of my eye. But I reassured myself that it wasn't what it seemed. He was probably just lost in contemplation. I pondered, yet it continued to unfold. As I prepared dinner, I sensed his gaze upon my back. When I turned, there he stood, simply observing me. Not in the way a son typically would. Mother. It was unlike anything else. It carried a weight, a purpose, and it stirred something deep within me that I was reluctant to acknowledge. I should have put an end to it right then. I should have spoken up, established some boundaries. A certain boundary existed. Yet, I chose to ignore it, and the reason eludes me. Perhaps it was guilt that held me back. After all, he had just experienced a profound loss of his future, his confidence struggling to uncover his own identity, and I didn't want to complicate matters for him. Or perhaps it was because, deep down, I cherished the way it made me feel, after years of fading into the background, of existing as little more than a whisper in my own story. At last, someone was truly seeing me. And it wasn't just anyone. It was him. And that's the part that eludes explanation. The part that resists being put into words. Because it feels so wrong. I know it's wrong. But once I experienced it, I couldn't shake it off. And once I caught the way he gazed at me, it was impossible to ignore. It felt as though we were both playing a game of denial, pretending not to acknowledge the unfolding events. Yet, with each moment of pretense, the truth edged closer to the surface, and I remained bewildered by how everything spiraled into this reality. It's a winding path we've traveled, one that led us to a line we never intended to cross. Yet here we stand, forever changed by the events that have unfolded. Nothing feels the same now, Ethan. Myself. This very house we once knew. The longing to turn back time tugs at my heart. A desperate wish to mend what's been broken. But deep down, I grapple with the uncertainty of whether it's even possible to reclaim what we've lost. As you journey with me, remember to show your appreciation for this tale by liking the video, sharing your reflections in the comments, and subscribing for more captivating narratives like this one. Believe me, there's a treasure trove of stories waiting to be revealed. That sensation of being observed washed over me. I looked up, and there he stood, a figure in the living room. By the window, he stood, a silent figure, hands tucked into his pockets, as if inviting my gaze. I couldn't help but notice him. A rush of emotions flooding through me, heat, shame, confusion, and something nameless that stirred within. I turned away, attempting to concentrate on my task. Yet his presence lingered, his eyes fixed on me, an undeniable weight that I felt deep inside. Then, even when I wasn't looking, and instead of telling him to stop, instead of walking inside and saying something, I stayed there. I stayed there and let it happen. That wasn't the only time. It happened again and again, in so many little ways. I'd be reading on the couch and with a fleeting glance upward, I caught him observing me, simply perched in silence, his expression a puzzle I couldn't decipher. Or there I was, immersed in the kitchen, stirring a pot on the stove, when that familiar weight settled in, that same tension enveloping the air. I would turn, and there he stood, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, exuding an air of nonchalance. Yet his eyes whispered a different tale. They expressed everything he couldn't voice, and I merely continued to feign ignorance. Or perhaps I truly didn't know how to confront it. Because the reality is, each time it occurred, it awakened something within me. Something I was reluctant to acknowledge. Something I didn't even realize lingered. You see, It wasn't solely about Ethan. It was about me, about all that I had lost, everything I believed I had buried me marriage. It withered away. It wasn't merely a failure. It was a wound that never truly mended. We once knew happiness, and I can still recall the way Ryan gazed at me when our paths first crossed, as if I were the sole treasure in his universe. His touch was gentle, reverent, as if I were a delicate thing he feared to lose. Yet, as time flowed on, that magic faded, and I faded with it. I would sit across from him at the dinner table. I could sense the distance growing between us. No matter how I tried to capture his attention, whether it was a new dress, a different hairstyle, or any effort to spark a connection, remained oblivious. His gaze was fixed on his phone, his words consumed by work or silence. Each moment he overlooked me. Each time he refrained from reaching out, I felt myself slipping away, as if I were becoming a mere shadow in the room, fading into the background. In the end, it had ceased to hurt. It was merely a void. Years passed, and suddenly, someone noticed me, truly saw me. It wasn't just anyone. It was Ethan, my son. A wave of self-loathing washed over me for allowing it to affect me so deeply. Yet I found myself powerless to change it. It wasn't solely about the glances. It was in those fleeting moments, the way he lingered nearby as I busied myself with tasks around the house, suddenly eager to lend a hand with matters he had previously ignored. One evening, the lock on the back door became stubborn, and I was tinkering with it, attempting to resolve the issue on my own. It was then that he approached quietly from behind. His presence, unnoticed by me, came. He simply emerged from the shadows. "Let me take care of this." He was so near. I could sense his breath tickling my neck. His hand brushed against mine as he reached for the screwdriver. And for a heartbeat, I was paralyzed. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. And neither did he. He was near, far too near. I understood I should have retreated. Yet I remained. And in that instant in that moment, it dawned on me that he wouldn't retreat either. We exchanged no words. He simply repaired the lock, handed me the screwdriver, and strolled away as if nothing had transpired. Yet, something had indeed occurred. An unnameable shift lingered in the air, undeniable and impossible to dismiss. The tension in this house had become a taut thread, ready to snap at any moment. Every interaction felt heavy, as if we were tiptoeing along an invisible line, pretending it didn't exist. Yet it loomed over us, growing more oppressive with each passing day. I found myself caught in a web of uncertainty, not wanting to know what lay ahead, but sensing that deep down, I already did. That realization weighed heavily on my mind, terrified me. That night still haunts me. It was late, close to midnight when I got home. My shift had run long, and I was exhausted. My feet ached, my head was pounding, and all I wanted was to crawl into bed and forget the day. The house was dark when I walked in, and for some reason, that darkness felt heavier than usual. It wasn't the comforting silence I was used to. No, it was. Something was different. The air felt off, as if an unseen presence lingered. I placed my keys on the counter and made my way to my room, still half asleep. But as I approached, a sound reached my ear, soft, rhythmic and faint. I froze, my mind racing with the possibility that perhaps I had left The window was ajar, and the wind danced with the curtains. But this sound was unlike any breeze. It emanated from within my room, a haunting echo that quickened my heartbeat. My body urged me to flee, to turn away, to resist the temptation of that door. Yet, I was powerless against the pull. My hand trembled as it approached the doorknob. When I finally pushed it open, the moment etched itself into my memory forever. As I entered, I found myself perched on the edge of his bed, careful to leave a sliver of space between us, a barrier that kept the moment from becoming too intimate. Silence enveloped us, thick and heavy, pressing down like an unshakable weight. We sat there in the dark, the stillness stretching on until I finally broke it. My voice a soft whisper, almost a plea. "Talk to me, I need to understand." He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he fixated on the floor, his hands balled into fists, as if he were battling an internal storm. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke, his voice barely above a murmur. "I don't know what's." There was something amiss. His voice trembled with uncertainty. I understood it was all tangled up. I recognized the wrongness. Yet my thoughts were ensnared by you. Words eluded me. What could I possibly say? I yearned to tell him he was mistaken, that he ought to cease, that this wasn't how things should be. But the truth remained unspoken, for deep down, I didn't wish for him to stop. Acknowledging that, even to myself, cast me into a shadow of guilt, making me feel like the most despicable person alive. We exchanged words, or perhaps we didn't. Maybe it was merely a fleeting moment. Minutes slipped away, and honestly, the details elude me now. Yet, I can vividly recall the way he gazed at me, as if I were the sole person in existence who mattered. It filled me with a loathing for myself, for the emotions it stirred within me, for the longing it ignited to remain, even when deep down, I knew I should have walked away. By the time I mustered the courage to leave, dawn was breaking, and the light filtering through the curtains felt like a harsh reminder, a slap to the face. As if the world was insisting I couldn't evade this reality forever. I retreated to my room, closed the door softly behind me, and as I lay in bed, a singular thought echoed in my mind. Nothing will ever be the same again. It unfolded late one night, as it often does, for nothing good ever comes from such moments. As the daylight faded, the house settled into a profound stillness, a stillness that weighed heavily in the air, challenging me to break the silence. I found myself in the living room, feigning interest in the television, yet my mind was ensnared in a relentless loop, fixated on him, on us, on the words they exchanged and those left unspoken. The tension hung between us, palpable and deafening, impossible to overlook. I knew I should retreat to my bed, should have distanced myself before the situation escalated. But I remained rooted in place. When I heard his footsteps echoing down the hall, I made no move to rise, no plea for him to turn back. I simply sat there, heart racing. My heart raced, my body tense, as I awaited his arrival. He paused in the doorway, lingering there as if weighing the decision to step inside. I could feel his gaze upon me, an unbearable weight. Yet I refused to meet his eyes, focusing instead on the flickering television, pretending not to notice how the atmosphere shifted the moment he entered. Every nerve in me ignited with his presence. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice soft and tentative, "Mom," as if testing the sound of the word, testing my reaction. I remained silent, paralyzed in my seat. Then he repeated it, "Mom, are you okay?" I turned my head, and when our eyes locked, something within me shattered. The expression on his face was beyond words, as if he were. Fear gripped me, yet a fierce resolve surged within, as if I were caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty. I found myself frozen, eyes locked on him, thoughts racing, chest constricted, struggling for breath. He stepped closer, and I remained still, knowing I should intervene, yet unable to muster the will. I simply sat there, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. When he settled beside me, the heat radiating from him was palpable. Yeah, I stayed rooted, hands quaking, heart thundering in my chest. I sensed his gaze upon me, a weight that felt almost unbearable, and I yearned to speak, to break the silence that enveloped us. He was about to leave, to retreat to his room, to act as if none of this was unfolding. But I found myself unable to let him go, because deep down, I didn't want him to leave, and that realization gnawed at me. It was the part I couldn't forgive myself for. He reached out, his fingers brushing against my hand, and I felt my breath catch. His touch was so gentle, so tentative, as if he were waiting for me to pull away. Yet, I remained still, allowing him to hold my hand. And I loathed myself for the way it stirred something within me, for the way it made me crave more, for the way it reignited a spark of life in me. "Mum," he said again, his voice trembling on the word. I turned to him, and the look in his eyes is etched in my memory, so anxious, so yearning, as if he were grasping for something elusive. Instead of pulling away, instead of halting him, I welcomed him closer, and when it happened, it felt surreal. It unfolded slowly, with a hesitance that lingered in the air, as if we were both caught in a delicate dance, waiting for the other to retreat, to voice the unspoken truth that this was wrong. Yet, neither of us found the words. He approached me with such gentleness, a carefulness that suggested he feared shattering something precious within me. As for me, I felt detached, as if I were an observer outside my own body, witnessing a scene I couldn't control. Despite the knowledge that we were treading on forbidden ground, a line that once crossed would lead us to a point of no return, I found myself unwilling to halt the unfolding moment. In the midst of it all, memories surged forth, uninvited, like specters from the past. I kept envisioning him as a little boy dashing through the house, that wide, toothy grin lighting up his face, asking. He called out for me to join him, pleading for my help with his Lego sets. His laughter echoed in my mind, that sweet, innocent sound that once filled our home with warmth. He was my son. He is my son. Yet now, I couldn't bear to look at him without feeling the weight of my failures, as if I had shattered everything, as if I had broken him. I found myself questioning how we arrived at this moment, how we drifted so far apart. Deep down, I understood the truth. It wasn't a sudden shift, but a slow descent, a gradual unraveling that I allowed to unfold. I let those glances linger. I permitted the tension to escalate, and I failed to intervene when I should have. Now, it feels too late. By the time lunch arrived, the silence in the house was suffocating. I could hear him moving about upstairs, yet he remained distant, not coming down. He made no effort to reach out to me, and I mirrored his silence, both of us dancing around the same heavy feelings of guilt and shame. We were too frightened to confront the truth, too afraid to confront each other. I sought refuge in distractions, but nothing could pull me away from the weight of it all. Cleaning, reading, even the mindless daytime TV shows that usually filled the background of my life. Each sound, every scent, every minute detail of this house echoed his presence, and I found no escape from him, nor from myself. It was only in the evening that I finally heard his footsteps on the stairs, and my heart froze at the sound of him approaching. I wasn't prepared to face him yet. I wasn't prepared to confront the weight of our actions. Yet I knew I couldn't evade him indefinitely. He entered the kitchen, hands buried deep in his pockets, shoulders slumped as if he wished to shrink away. When he finally spoke, his voice barely reached me, and that single word pierced through me like a blade. I turned to face him, and the look on his face nearly shattered me. He appeared so lost, so filled with shame, so achingly young, like the little boy who once sought refuge in my lap during storms of fear. All I could think about was the distance we had fallen, the depths I had allowed us to plunge. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice gentle and tentative, as if treading on fragile ground. He was filled with a deep-seated fear of uttering the wrong words, and I longed to reassure him, to pull him close and promise that everything would be all right, that together we would navigate this storm, that somehow we would mend what was broken. Yet, I found myself unable to meet his gaze for more than fleeting moments. I turned back to the sink, my voice barely a whisper. "Not now." I despised how my tone sounded cold, distant, as if I were indifferent. But the truth was, I cared deeply, perhaps too deeply, and that was precisely why I couldn't speak, Why I couldn't confront him? The weight of uncertainty loomed large. I was paralyzed by the fear that maybe, just maybe, I wouldn't be able to fix it. He didn't argue, didn't press me further. He simply nodded and walked out of the kitchen. His footsteps retreating up the stairs, and as I stood there, alone again, I felt like the worst person in the world. That night, as I lay in bed, staring up at the ceiling, I kept hearing his voice. "Mom." It echoed in my head, over and over again. Soft, broken, like a plea for something I couldn't give him. I kept telling myself that things would get better, that we'd find a way to move on. But deep down, I didn't believe it. Deep down, I knew the truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. I thought things would get better with time. I kept telling myself that if we just avoided each other, if we just pretended like nothing had happened, eventually, it would fade away, but it didn't. If anything, it got worse. The silence between us was louder than ever. Every room we shared felt like a war zone, with invisible landmines scattered everywhere, waiting for one of us to step on them. The tension it was unbearable, and it wasn't just us who noticed. Others did too. Cade was the first to speak up. One afternoon, he stopped by to pick up a box of old books he'd left in the garage. The moment he walked into the house, I could feel him studying me, watching me. Cade always had this uncanny ability to read me, to sense when something was off. That day, he didn't even try to mask his concern. "You look tired," he said, leaning against the kitchen counter as if he still lived here. I shrugged him off, claiming I'd been busy at work. But he wasn't convinced. He kept pressing, asking if everything was okay, if something was wrong. For a split second, I was on the verge of revealing everything to him. I hesitated, grappling with the weight of my secret. How could I possibly look him in the eye and confess my actions? It felt impossible, so I chose to weave a lie instead. I smiled and assured him that all was well. And in time, he ceased his inquiries. Yet, the way he gazed at me as he departed told me he sensed the truth beneath my facade. And then there was Tiana, Ethan's girlfriend, who had been frequenting our space, dropping by unexpectedly, eager to share moments with him. At first, I dismissed her presence, but soon I became acutely aware of her scrutinizing gaze. The way her eyes lingered on me when I entered a room. She sensed the tension, perhaps not fully understanding it, but she knew something was amiss. Exactly what it was, but she could sense it, and that filled me with dread, because if she continued to search, if she kept probing, eventually she would uncover the truth. And if she did, if anyone did, I couldn't fathom my next move. I believed I was managing to hold it all together, convinced I was doing well by maintaining my distance and keeping my emotions in check. But then, Peyton arrived. She has been my closest confidant for years, knowing me better than anyone else. The instant she stepped into the house, she sensed it, felt that something was amiss. "You've been distant lately," she remarked, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, her arms crossed, as if preparing to interrogate me. Everything was okay, or at least that's what I wanted to convey. I wanted to tell her yes, to weave a comforting lie like I had with Cade. But when I opened my mouth, silence enveloped me. I found myself staring at the cup of tea cradled in my hands, silently wishing for it to slip from her grasp. Yet, Peyton, she was steadfast, never one to let go of anything easily. "Come on," she urged. "Talk to me. What's going on?" I could feel her gaze piercing through me, dissecting every detail: my face, my posture, the tremor in my hands as I raised the cup to my lips. I realized I wasn't concealing my turmoil as well as I thought. For a fleeting moment, I nearly confessed, almost allowed the truth to pour out. But then I hesitated, grappling with the weight of my words. How could I possibly say it? How could I meet her eyes and admit the truth? In the depths of my heart, I felt the weight of truth pressing down on me. I forced a smile, whispering, I'm fine. Though Peyton's eyes betrayed her disbelief, she sighed, accepting my words but not truly convinced, her gaze lingering on me as if she anticipated my inevitable unraveling. It twisted my stomach, knowing she wouldn't let this go. Not for long. The days dragged on, each one heavier than the last, with Ethan and me barely exchanging words. The silence in the house was thick and suffocating, a palpable tension that we tiptoed around, both aware of the danger lurking beneath the surface. Then, one fateful night, everything came crashing down. I had gone to bed early, hoping sleep would grant me an escape from my thoughts. But rest eluded me. My mind replayed every moment, looks, the touches, the instant we crossed that line. I kept, in the depths of my thoughts, I found myself questioning the unfolding events, pondering how it all came to be, and yet, deep down, I was aware of the truth that weighed heavily upon me. The burden was suffocating, and I yearned for a way out, a chance to reverse the course of fate. But the possibility eluded me. What troubled me further was the uncertainty of my own desires. Did I truly wish to change it? At some point, fatigue must have claimed me, for when I finally opened my eyes, darkness enveloped the room. I was not alone. An unmistakable presence lingered, standing at the foot of my bed, observing me. My heart raced, and for a fleeting moment, I questioned my reality, wondering if I was trapped in a dream, a mere figment of my imagination. But then, I heard a gentle inhale, a soft footfall, and then, a whisper, shaky and uncertain, yet brimming with emotion. Something else. Something heavy. Something I didn't want to name. I sat up, my breath shallow, my pulse hammering in my ears. Ethan. My voice barely came out, but he didn't answer. Remained still, just standing there, enveloped in the shadows. And I understood the reason for his presence. Yeah, I still inquired. What are you doing? He breathed out, as if he had been holding his breath, as if he had been anticipating this moment. As I begin to speak, thoughts of you flood my mind, twisting my stomach with every word I utter. I can't help but be consumed by the feelings you evoke. I shook my head. Ethan, I know it's wrong. His voice cracked. I know it is, but I don't know how to stop. I felt sick. I wanted to tell him to go, to leave, to pretend this never happened. But I didn't, for I found myself unable to, as a dark, fractured piece of my being resisted the thought of him doing so. That, indeed, was the most painful truth of all. And if this tale stirred something within you, I urge you, do not let it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Because believe me, there's always a new tale waiting to be discovered.